Good evening, everybody. Welcome to St. John's for this presentation this evening, the title of which I have forgotten, but how churches can get involved in the homelessness crisis in Hamilton. We're really grateful for the speakers. I think Deborah's going to talk more about that, so I won't do her job. My name's Andrew. I'm one of the clergy who's around St. John's, the one you'll see a lot of the time, especially if you come during the week. This place is built on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. We're grateful for their stewardship of these lands since time immemorial, and for the spirit with which they welcome newcomers who arrive. We remember the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Treaty and the Upper Canada Treaty of 1792, both of which remind us that the resources of these lands are meant to be spent for the welfare of all people, given to all equally. We strive to live up to the spirit of these agreements, and we pray always that our actions will match our words. I hope this evening is a blessing for you. I'll turn it over to my partner in crime.
Hi, that means me. My name is Deborah Bowen. I'm on the organizing committee of the Hearts and Minds group, and we plan these sorts of events. I'm also a warden at the church, which means I'm supposed to know more than I do about how things work. However, what I'm here to do right now is to say we're so happy that you're here and to introduce our panelists. We're going to talk tonight about Hamilton's housing crisis and what we can do about it. So we have three panelists, as you can see, over to my right, your left, and the first is Dan Panagakos. He's going to wave at you. Let me tell you about Dan. He's on the leadership team of HATS, which you may know is the Hamilton Alliance for Tiny Shelters. And here is the statement of belief of HATS. At HATS, our objective is straightforward: to address the pressing housing crisis in our community by providing warm, safe, and dignified temporary tiny homes within a village setting, complete with essential wraparound supports to individuals experiencing homelessness in Hamilton. Dan is going to present first. After he's done his little presentation, which will be 10 or 15 minutes, we're going to hear from Jess Brand, who's waving at you from over there as well. Jess is the Regional Director of Indwell for the Hamilton and Peel region. And here is a comment from her website, or their website. Indwell is a Hamilton-based Christian charity that has been supporting vulnerable adults dealing with mental health challenges for 50 years. It's the fastest growing developer of new, supportive, affordable housing in Ontario. Indwell's communities presently support over 1,250, that is 1,250 tenants in regions across southern and southwestern Ontario, and there are plenty more housing developments in the pipeline. When Jess has spoken for a little bit, Graham is going to, as we say, bring it home. Graham is, for one thing, an important member of this congregation at St. John the Evangelist Church. He was for many years the Director of Projects and Development at Indwell, but for the last 3 years, has been the president of Flourish, which is an organization that provides real estate development services to clients who want to pursue affordable housing and social purpose projects. A team offering assistance with everything in terms of planning from the very beginning right through to when people get to actually live in those developments, in those houses. So we're very much looking forward to hearing from these three people. When they've each presented a little bit to us, we will have an open forum for you to ask questions, to bring comments. We'll hear them speak with one another about what we've heard. So let's pass it over right away, please, now to Dan. Thank you, Dan.
Hey. Hello, everyone. It's nice to be back. I'm going to start off in a slightly different way. First of all, I'll introduce myself. I am the foods guy and hopefully education coordinator down the road. Yes, HATS will have education component classrooms if I have anything to do with it. My primary focus has been food, and I want to start off in a slightly different way in that I want to talk about when I was here last. And a few months ago, I think it was, there was a meeting after the service, and there were various groups that are associated with the church, and there was questions and answer sort of opportunity down in the basement. I was nervous coming here. It had been a long time since I'd been here. My children are Anglican and were confirmed here. I think the person who was helping with the confirmation was Brian, a wonderful human being who has passed a while back. But when I stepped in the door, despite my nervousness, there were hugs, handshakes. Dan, people remembered my name. I have trouble doing that on occasions, to be honest. And I felt welcome. It was the exhale. It was the relaxed body so I could get to work and feel comfortable. So thank you for that. And so that is kind of why I'm associated with hats. And I'm going to start off, like I said, in a slightly different way. And I'm really nervous about the technology right now. So if it goes, it goes. We'll just wing it. So here we go. Sure. Oh, God. Are you sure you want that? Yeah, my wife wants to shut off right now. So this actually is connected to Deborah Bowen, and she seems innocent and nice. It's not true. As neighbors do, we were chatting, and I'm not particularly smart, so I started talking about Pygmalion, a play by George Bernard Shaw. And of course, my interpretation of the father was wrong. And Deborah very kindly, tip what? Like this? I feel like I should be in Vegas now, tipping it up. I don't know. Sorry, I will try, I'm sorry. I taught for 30 years, no mic, just so you know. So, and it sent me down a rabbit hole. Because, not that I doubted Deborah at all, she knows her stuff. She's a professor after all, she knows what she's talking about. But I was curious a little bit more about the background to it. And I reread the play. And if you've seen My Fair Lady, it's the same thing, right? Everybody knows that, we've seen the film and the play. And there's a line at the end, and I'm just going to read it for a second, okay? And it's basically Eliza Doolittle basically giving that silly linguist Higgins a piece of her mind. And essentially, she goes, do you know what began my real education? You calling me Miss Doolittle. That day when I first came, that was the beginning of self-respect for me. Eliza Doolittle continues, you see, the difference between a lady and a flower girl is not how she behaves, but how she's treated. The whole essence of hats is about focusing on the people who need our help. What do you need? What procedures, what methods work? If you think we don't have solutions, it's not true. We have lots of solutions. Graham knows all about it, Dan knows all about it. But it's about taking a different step. And there's a lot of back and forth and finger pointing between the various levels of government. And as far as I'm concerned, there's blame for everybody on this, right? We need to start looking at different ways and different methods that will work. And for me, and obviously I'm biased, it's hats. So as you know, we haven't had a piece of land yet, and it was important to me to keep going and get the volunteers trained and knowing what they're in for. So the last thing before I move on is going down this rabbit hole. I ended up in this is how pathetic I am. You don't want to hang out with a history teacher. It's really boring. So I looked up the Poor Laws of 1834. Yes, you paid for the whole seat, but you're only going to need the edge, right? And what was interesting is the division. What caught my attention was the division between those who are deemed deserving and those who are not. If you're on the street, you're there for a reason. And it's not about deserving or not. If you're there, you need our support. Nobody's there on their own. Nobody's there willingly. They have no other choice. Whether there is other choices or whatever's going on, for them, that's where they have to be. So that's where we have to meet them. So to facilitate that, to show some sort of respect and to get experience with the support of this church, and the use of that kitchen, we were able to head out into the encampments. There was about 10 to 15 volunteers. Not everybody's comfortable going into the encampments. There are people who did the shopping, people who prepped downstairs in the kitchen, people who were handing out the food. So, this is the group, the food team. And I didn't take pictures of the clients, the people that are getting the food, just out of respect. But there's some of the volunteers, Karen and Deborah, and my wife's there too, Diane. Hey, Diane. The whole point here is, prior to going out into the encampment, again, has to do its due diligence. We have to be careful, and we have to think things through. So before we went out, all the volunteers that were going to be doing face-to-face with the residents, with the people in the encampments, essentially they got de-escalation training through the hub. And God bless the hub, because if it wasn't for the hub, there would be a lot of suffering, even more so than there already is. They're getting kids off the street from gangs. They are helping with drug addicts and clothing people and so forth. The thing is, when you're in an encampment and dealing with people, or even if you are in a tiny shelter, people with mental illnesses, people with drug addiction, people with all kinds of emotional dysregulation. And again, not everybody has mental illness or drug addiction who's on the street. Some people are there for a lot of different reasons. But many of it is due to these situations. So essentially, we got to give them time. We bring them in and we support them. But we have to know how to support them in the right way. De-escalation. They're going to freak out. We had several freakouts in the encampments. A person was just grabbed some food and ran. And they said, should we run after him? And I went, I'm not running for two reasons. Number one, when I run, I jiggle. And that's not fun, okay? The second reason is, are we going to wrestle him to the ground, call the police? Right. Let him have his hamburger. It's fine. We saw him another time. We talked to him. I go, if you're in that much distress, talk to us, right? So de-escalation, how to calm things down, how to listen. The other thing is also, because we're going to have a fully functioning kitchen, we'll be providing 3 squares a day and snacks and everything. Food will be provided for them. There's also a requirement to have a food handler certificate, just to meet obligations and to show that we know what we're doing and nobody gets sick. And some people, their health is an issue, so we really don't want them getting sick. And safety protocols, as well as visiting other sites. The one we tend to visit is the Tiny Shelter in Kitchener, which is a good model. Some things we accept, some things we don't. All right? Hats will be unique to Hamilton. And we've been at it for 3.5 years, so the detail and experience and time we've had to develop this program is astounding. We're ready to hit the ground. We just need land. Now, moving on. The thing about what the church did for us, it seems like a small thing. Here's the kitchen, knock yourself out. That support allowed us to give 250 meals. And a couple of those nights was cold. And I'm a big baby in the cold. You give me the heat anytime. We were out there for 3 hours, and it was a cold winter night, one of the few really cold nights this winter. And there they were. And we also brought along warm clothing. Within an hour or two, everything was gone. The most interesting thing for me, however, really was, I gave an old winter coat that was still in good shape. And I saw a gentleman walking by with it. And it looked so much better on him. It really did. I'm glad he got it. So we were there giving out the food, everything from cleaning supplies, wipes, feminine products, like hand, like you name it, they need it. Okay? It's a struggle. It's exhausting to survive. And so by providing nourishing meals, we have chefs who can cook quite well. And so we offered actually, just so you know, the meal we served, in case you care, it was chicken chili. It was my chicken chili recipe, and it was delicious, just going to say. Green salads, hamburgers, and hot dogs, and drinks, as well as we brought some fruit as well. So the volunteers in the food program are ready, and the use of the kitchen is going to help us in terms of when we do get a site, it's going to take time to get the kitchen going. And so it'll be boxed meals. So we will need, again, that kitchen in your basement there to provide food and get people on their feet. I was talking to somebody who works for the Addiction and Drug and Alcohol Center in Hamilton. ADGAS, I think, is the acronym. And they do what's called a harm reduction. And on average, it can take 1 year to 2 years to get people back on their feet. Right? It takes time. It takes a lot of love. But not the kind of romantic love, but in terms of the traditional ancient Greek word, agape. Love in terms of respect, of caring, of being a part of that community and taking it very seriously. So, just so you know, because you allowed us to use that kitchen, people got helped. And in terms of what you can continue to do, just let us keep using that kitchen, and we'll keep cooking. Copies of the speech can be bought at Thank you very much. I'll hand it over to the big boss. I was just the warm-up act, and this is Dan Badess, our chair.
Oh, what a hard act to follow. I got to follow this act. Just bear with me, guys. Again, technology, right? So we just want to make sure we've got the right presentation up. What I want to do is just show you a few slides to give a summary of hats. I want to give time with Jess and Graham to make sure we get everybody through and that you have plenty of time for questions. So I'll be quick. It's only 3 or 4 slides. So hats were basically born about 3.5, 4 years ago. It is a Canadian institution. It really is. It's an organization that's registered, nonprofit. We're pursuing, having another support, but we're right now got about 120 volunteers. No one is paid. So all funds that we are raising are private at this time. There's no money coming in from the city. So I want to make that very, very clear at this point in time. So we've got about 120, and probably 30 are highly active at this point in time because, as Dan indicated, we're very optimistic that we're going to get a site soon. So we're doing a lot of prep work in that regard. What this slide really highlights is, yes, if you give someone a safe place, give them some dignity, give them some stability, only goodness can come out of that. And that's what we're all about. We've got many partners, and Indwell being one of them, many faith communities. We've got individuals on city council that are very strong and helpful in pushing our effort, promoting our effort. They're strong advocates. We have many, many donors. And, from the $5 to the $20,000 to the $50,000 donors, we've raised quite a bit of funds. We've raised $250,000 so far. We have pledges for about another $250,000 once we get a site. So we're upwards of in the $500,000 once we get our site. So that's why we're pushing so hard for that. We are structured whereby we have a board of directors to set the strategic move for the organization. And then we have our leadership team, which Dan is a part of. And we've got about 21 individuals with a lot of experience and expertise on there to contribute to our solution set. So we're working right now on implementation, figuring out exactly how we want to implement, depending on the profile of a particular property. Once we get a property identified, piece of land identified, we can then tailor our needs around that. Now, we have a number of work groups, and that's where Dan comes in. He's in with the food prep over on the right-hand side. And what this slide is saying is we HATS, at this point in time, are not the operational center. We are in the implementation, development and implementation. We will secure the necessary experienced resources that will be frontliners to handle the village operations. And those work groups become essential in carrying out those operations. This is a slide that I think summarizes it all for us. We have our unhoused off on the left. And what we want to do is eventually get them to a situation where they have permanent supportive housing, such as what Indwell provides. However, we can't get that there in one pass because we have in the middle temporary housing in the form of shelters or our solution set being proposed. The problem is, where we see temporarily housed at this very point in time, we're at capacity. Permanently housed, we're at capacity. So what we're trying to do with HATS is expand the capacity in the middle piece here where we can bridge the gap to getting to finally get to permanent supportive housing. So that's where we fit in. So we're trying to take individuals out of their survival mode and give them some stability, dignity, and supports. So we bring in the appropriate supports, whether it's related to mental health, addictions, whatever. But that would be done in the village. And it is a managed village. So there's 2 people would be on site at any point in time managing the situation. So we want to make sure we can develop their life skills. The key point here is to not pass judgment on any individual. Every individual has to have a tailored program by which to transition through the middle, through the temporary housing village into permanent housing. And we need to take each individual and tailor that program for them. And we need to be patient. That could be a year to 2 years for some, it could be longer. So oftentimes we're asked, well, how quickly can someone pass through? Don't know. Every individual is individualistic in their needs. So we want to make sure we meet them at where they're at. And some people aren't ready, that's fine. But we're not going to pass judgment. So over the 3.5 years that Dan referenced, we've been very fortunate that we've been able to look at many villages, I'll refer to them as villages, throughout North America. We have a 110-page report outlining the details of that. We feel we have a solution set that is really reflective of the best practices. We've taken the best from all, and we think we have a solution that will work very, very well. One of the slides I don't have on here, which I wish I did, shows that there's a number of components for the village, one of which is obviously the tiny homes. So we're building 8 by 12 tiny homes, and they're temperature controlled, so there'll be air conditioning and heating, fully insulated. We give a key to the village member. It's equipped with a bed, a microwave, but not plumbing. It's only got electricity. We have a communal unit where the kitchen would be, along with laundry facilities and gathering area as well. So all of that creates the village. The controls and the operations, we've tapped into, as I said, a number of the villages where procedures work, and where we've also tailored, whenever you build a solution, you need to focus on the customer. The customer in this case is our unhoused. We have interviewed well over 150 individuals to help make sure that we have a solution that works for them. And to say the least, when we talk about the solution set, they're ecstatic. Unfortunately, we're not able to perhaps in an instant in time give everybody housing and the supports. We need time to graduate through that. But we're really working well with a coalition with Graham and his people, and we're feeling that we're very close. We're getting very, very close. These are some of the wraparound services, only some of them. We probably have about 30 that we tap into. One individual I want to mention, Jen Bonner from the Hub. She's on our leadership team, and she provides very good insight on the needs of the individuals that we're trying to serve. So with that, I think it's best to turn over to Jess and to Graham so that we can get to the questions. Okay? Jess?
Sure. I'm just going to borrow this. Hi, everyone. My name is Jess Brand, and I work for Indwell as our regional director. Been working with Indwell for just about 14 years now, and met a lot of really incredible people while doing this work. And the agape that you were talking about, I think that's something that I want us to be thinking about tonight. And I was set off a little bit by the comment about deserving and undeserving poor, because this is something that still we wrestle with in our cities today. I was actually just talking with my daughter about her philosophy class in high school, and they were talking about this very concept of, they didn't use the same language, right? This grade 12 students sorting this out. There's a little piece of data that I encountered in when doing some reading the other day, and it was, there is a shared experience that many folks who are unsheltered in their homelessness that they share, and that is an adverse childhood experience. And when we talk about undeserving and deserving, a contributing factor to being homeless obviously it's because there's not enough places to live and it's unaffordable and all those pieces, but it gets passed down to those who are most vulnerable. And one of those pieces is adverse childhood experiences. And so when we talk about deserving and undeserving, let's erase that language. These are all people and are worthy of dignity, of being treated with love, and for us to see the hope that is possible. So anyway, I'm going to tell you a story about 3 neighbors. And actually, I would like some help to tell this story. So I'm looking for 3 neighbors. Can you raise your hand if you can be a neighbor? You're not going to have to talk. I just want you to come up. Stacy, Bruce. Oh, but I can't because you guys are together, right? Alice. If you can just come and stand here. So our 3 neighbors, standing in the blue light. Actually, I can block them. No, I'll just stand in the blue light. Our 3 neighbors went for a walk along the escarpment in Hamilton. I think it was right up here at the Shit Oak Stairs. And they came upon a waterfall. That's pretty usual in our city, isn't it? To come across a waterfall. And they were admiring the waterfall. It had just rained. It was the summer of 2024, after all. And there was a lot of rain. And they were admiring how much water was cascading down the mountain. It was something that they hadn't really seen. And then, I need another neighbor. Can someone be another neighbor? Yeah, you, come on up. If you're way at the back, we've got a blue swath of fabric here. It's representing our waterfall. Come on up, and maybe you can come and just stand here in the water. Yeah, you're in the water. And what's your name? Sorry? Cindy. They came across a waterfall, and Cindy, their neighbor, was struggling in the fast-flowing water. Well, without a thought, Stacy jumped in to the waterfall to help Sydney, yes, stretching out his hand to help her out of the water and onto dry ground. They did this. So, while Stacy was in the water helping Cindy out, he was surprised. They were also surprised. I need 2 more folks. Yep, come on up. I need 1 more. I'm going to start volunteering you. Come on up, and you can be over here. So Stacy, if you can be here. While Stacy was in the water, they were surprised to see their other neighbors, Sarah and Sue, struggling in the water. So they called out for Bruce and Alice to come and help as well. Come and help. And together, They worked on helping their neighbors get out of the water. Without missing a beat, they formed a human chain. Together, they helped them out of the water. By this time, Cindy had managed to dry herself off and shouted out, "Look, there's more neighbors." You don't all have to come up, it's fine. "There's more neighbors, there's more. What are we gonna do?" And they jumped back in, holding on to each other to help with the efforts to pull people from the stream. It seemed that people just kept coming. They were getting tired. Well, Alice was quite affected by this time in the stream. She needed, oh no, Alice wasn't in the stream, Sue. Sue was very affected by her time in the stream, and she needed time to rest and recover. So Bruce took some time to make sure that Sue was okay. So taking care, and at the same time, Cindy and Stacy stayed here to help folks come out of the water. And over here, Sarah and Alice were like, you know what? We got to do something about this. Why is this happening? Where are all these folks coming from? What is going on? Well, it didn't take the two of them long to climb upstream because the city had installed stairs and chain link fences to make it very safe for all of us. Upstream, they found that people were falling into the stream because the bridge was broken. The river had flowed through the banks, and unless someone did something to fix what was happening, people would continue to fall into the water. So they joined together to begin to address what was going on upstream. While downstream, the rest of the crew continued to help one another, and as people were pulled out of the stream, they joined in to help those who were coming down the stream. Thank you to our actors. Take a bow. Seriously, thank you, because this is actually quite a troubling parable. Perhaps you've heard this parable before. This public health parable is intended to talk with us about prevention. The stream that people fall into is precarity, scarcity, the consequences of poverty. It's evidenced by homelessness, by health concerns, struggling mental health, substance use, violence, loneliness. The crumbling banks and broken bridge are a combination of those broken parts of our world that allow people to fall into precarity. It includes a social system that has a hard time building affordable housing. Don't we know it? Housing vacancy rates below 2% in our city. Increasing rental costs. $1,704 a month for a one-bedroom this month in Hamilton. Stagnant disability pensions. If you're on disability, you may earn just over $300 a month. Notice that that amount is less than what it actually costs to have a one-bedroom apartment in Hamilton. We know about rising grocery costs, and we also experience increasing individualization and isolation. We see that too, don't we? This story could just as easily have been a story of encountering our neighbors encamped on the escarpment, a story of neighbors helping neighbors when they're experiencing precarity because of agape love. Here's another way that story can be told. I want to tell you a story about my friend Sandy, who passed away 2 years ago. Sandy attended church with me in the East End, and she lived in an Indwell building across the road from our church. Sandy was a gardener, a crass jokester, a follower of Jesus, and a good friend to many. Sandy was a longtime Hamiltonian as well. When Sandy was homeless, she worked on Barton Street with the working girls, as she called her community, and she eventually found Helping Hands Street Mission. While Helping Hands didn't provide Sandy with a place to live, Helping Hands met Sandy with agape love, connecting her with friends, clean clothes, a local church, reminded her of her worth and that she mattered. They helped to pull her out of the stream. Sandy got connected with Indwell's housing and was able to move into Rudy House Commons on Main Street when the building opened in 2016. Sandy was able to achieve some stability, had an apartment door that she could lock herself with her own key, a place to keep her dog, Sarah, room for her scooter because of the lost mobility she had, and she began to attend to her own health and wellness, making doctor's appointments. This is how Sandy eventually learned that she was living with cancer. and she was able to participate in treatment and home care in her apartment with dignity. One of our last conversations together was Sandy demanding that I participate in cancer screening for myself. Jess, you need to get yourself checked. I remember thinking, how in the world can someone participate in cancer screening, in ordinary health care, when they don't know where they're going to sleep at night? Sandy's cancer was more advanced because of the big gap in her health care, and she knew it. Sandy's story motivates me to build more supportive housing as fast as we can, because there are more people out there who are missing out on vital health and wellness the longer they live without housing. In our city, we have a lot of neighbors who help neighbors, and this is likely the first best thing we can do in response to the housing crisis. We can look people in the eye, agape love, check in on each other. We can get trained in the lock zone, perhaps save a life. We can learn the phone numbers of crisis lines to call for help when we see someone in trouble. We can support initiatives like hats that help people out of the river, out of a tent, into a safer option where perhaps they can stabilize until supportive housing is built, just like Dan's slide. Upstream, we're looking to rebuild the bridges and the riverbanks. Indwell is building and operating over 600 units of supported housing in Hamilton, with an over 94% retention rate year over year. People stay in their homes. Helping people stay housed, staying out of the river. We have nearly 100 units, or more than 100 units, poised ready for construction, and alongside other supported housing providers, we have over 400 units ready to build. Graham will talk about that when he brings it home. So what can you do? In this downstream space where people are, get trained in the lock zone, support hats, make room in your kitchen, look people in the eye, get to know them by name, just like we knew all of our neighbors here by name, even though sometimes it was hard to remember everybody's name. We did it. Move upstream, write your local ward councillor, or write them all. Tell them that supportive housing saves lives and is the most effective response to the housing crisis, the homelessness crisis. Really be the church to each other. Come alongside a supportive housing community. Build relationships. Agape love. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Guys, thanks very much for laying out the background. Over dinner, whoever made it, well, all of you who brought that dinner, thank you. It was fantastic. I had a very full plate. I really appreciated it. It made me reminded how thankful I am for many, many stabilities in my life, that I can show up to a community like this, get a plate full of food, talk to good people about hopeful solutions. But we know that right now there's probably 300 people or so who are outside in tents in our neighborhoods, and there's 1,600 people who are considered homeless. So I know we're all here to figure out, like, what can we do about that? Because none of us, hands up if you're satisfied with the status quo. Perfect. That means that we're all not satisfied with the status quo. When we think about how to move forward, I'm assuming that everybody here is from Hamilton. So you know that we're a gritty, ambitious city, hardscrabble. Sometimes we have a hard time agreeing with each other because we all have a way, have some opinion about how to get things done, and usually our own way is the best way. It's difficult for us to cooperate, and that extends to us as agencies. I work with Indwell, or have for a long time, with Hamilton is Home, a new coalition of housing providers. One of the first things we realized was we all knew each other, we all were friendly to each other, but we rarely cooperated. We rarely actually shared, secret or private information that meant something to how we ran our business, because we were always competing for the same resources. A grant application comes out, we all try to get that 3.4 million so we can build our project at the expense of somebody else not getting it. These are the kind of things that were ingrained in us because it's just the way things are. So for the last 3 years, 4 years almost, we've been saying, how do we change that? How do we actually cooperate? How do we share information? How do we pull for each other, not push against each other? And I think that the time has come where this is going to make a difference. Dan talked about hats as a part of the immediate response we can make to homelessness. Jess talked about standing in the river, which is a great place to stand if you're looking to cool off, but it's not a great place to stand if you don't know how to swim. We don't know what to do, or at least we feel as a community that we don't know what to do about homelessness, about street encampments, about people in parks. And it's gotten to the point where we can barely cooperate even around the council table. So the mayor had to come out with a directive, a hard line, tell staff what to do, come back on the 18th of September with a plan. I'm like everybody else, I have no problem bashing City Hall, but let's maybe actually step back and see if that's where we should direct our anger, or direct our focus, I should say. It's not at the moment, although there are a couple key things we should tell City Hall. So what I would like to do, I was at the dinner table downstairs, and a couple folks at my table said, are we going to leave tonight with something practical? So I came and changed my presentation. Yes, there's 3 things that we can do, and Jess kind of alluded to this, and Dan's talked about some practical actions we can take. There's a report coming to council on September 18th that's going to lay out how the city should respond to what the mayor asked for, sanctioned encampments. Nobody really likes that term, but practically it means that there's somewhere you can go to set up your tent or have a cabin, probably have a cabin, actually the mayor doesn't like tents, where you can go and legitimately stay in that, where you're not going to be forced to leave every certain number of days. And that's a good thing. That's actually a good idea. We should have done that 4 years ago, but next best time is now. But nobody believes that living in a garden shed or a cabin or a bunkie is actually housing, and that's actually something that should be long-term. So it's a triage measure. It's like sitting in the waiting room at the hospital. You sure as heck hope you don't have to sit there forever, but it beats sitting in the car in the parking lot. So what do we do between today and the 18th, and what do we do between the 18th and Christmas? That's kind of what I'm going to focus on. Hamilton is Home has put together, we got past this sort of keep it to ourselves, and we started sharing information. And we put together a chart. You see it's got the coalition. It's a bigger sheet, and it doesn't all fit on the screen, so just bear with me. It's kind of just representing. We can take bold action in Hamilton right now to build 1,516 new apartments by 8 different agencies starting in the next 12 months. Indwell has a project with 23 family units that has a building permit ready for pickup at City Hall, but we just are missing a little bit of money from the province. Across all of these projects, we need the funding. Everything else can move forward under our own steam. There's 2 areas where this funding actually needs to come from: the federal government and the province. Now, the good news is both of them have it. So here's where I can't even read that, so never mind you in the back. That's just to show you that we do have a chart, and I can show you the details later. This is the level of detail that we got to. We actually wrote down the agency name. City Housing Hamilton has got 2, Good Shepherd's got 4, Indwell's got 6, gosh, I can't even read that. Sacagawea, Victoria Park, and YWCA. So these are all established. Did I miss one? Kiwanis, thanks, I couldn't read it there. Kiwanis has 4, it looks like, 3 or 4. So these are all, you've probably heard all of these names. They're the big dogs when it comes to developing affordable housing and supportive housing. We know how to do it. We've done it. We have a proven track record. And we have all of these sites are all approved by our various boards to move forward. But that chart shows what we need from the federal government. The National Housing Strategy lays out different programs about how you can apply for funding. They don't just give lots of grants, they want you to borrow the money from the feds because, nobody wants to give money away. But that's good news because we're actually only asking for a third of the $369 million in grants. We only want $130 million in grants. The rest is debt, which they love to give out. That means they'll get it back. The problem is, none of these programs align with the timelines that Hamilton needs to get this number of units dealt with, and they make the rules incredibly complicated to apply for this funding. Here's the problem for CMHC, but maybe the opportunity for us and why we need you to email Minister Tassi, Minister Philomena Tassi. Every year, CMHC, they call it lapsing. At the end of the year, if they have unspent budget, it just goes back to Treasury Board and disappears back into the national pool. Now, I guess on a very macro level, that maybe is good for us as a national debt ratio or something, but at a local level, it's a big problem because it means housing dollars that were budgeted didn't get spent, and they didn't get spent in Hamilton. If we go on the website, on the government's website, it shows that for the last 5 years, CMHC has lapsed $644 million every year. Some years, $1.2 billion. It expires because they couldn't get it out the door. That means they failed to get housing built. That's a problem. It's also a problem when it comes to election time, but we'll get to that. The opportunity in this, though, is that the money has already been set aside by Parliament. It's already designated to build housing, and Hamilton should stand there and put up our hand and say, send it to Hamilton. If you can't get it out the door, we'll get the housing built. So we need you to help us communicate that message to Minister Tassi. I say Minister Tassi, Philomena Tassi, because she is in government. She is a federal cabinet minister. She's not responsible for housing. It's Sean Fraser, but he's in Nova Scotia, so we might as well talk to our local minister, and she can pass it on to her colleague. Now, I shouldn't say we did actually talk to Minister Fraser. He was in Hamilton a couple weeks ago, and that's why we made them this chart. We gave him this chart when he was here. And then I did actually happen to run into Minister Freeland, Chrystia Freeland, who's the finance minister. I happened to run into her in Sudbury, and I mentioned it to her there too. So they all know about this, so they're all ready to hear from us. Now let's switch to the province. You probably heard the mayor, everybody reads the Spectator, I take it. So you know in the Spectator or anywhere, City Hall is always saying, this is not our responsibility to deliver health care. We shouldn't be the ones putting this on the tax levy, blah, blah, blah. That's true. As a taxpayer in Hamilton, as a property taxpayer, I don't really want to pay for healthcare costs, mental health and addiction, through our property taxes when we're already paying that money to the federal government and the province to deliver healthcare, but they're failing to do so. So how do we tell the province to send the money down so we can actually support our neighbors who need mental health and addiction service, but they're not getting it? So again, this money is already out there. The feds send health transfers to the province. They don't spend all that money. If you pay attention to any of the news, you know it's somewhere in the billions that they don't get out the door. But a lot of that money is federal mental health investments that get transferred to the province that don't make it all the way down. So the province has the funds available. We only need $20 million, or $23.4 million on an annual basis to cover all the mental health care and addiction support for 400 people who could live in the supportive housing that we have available to build. So on that big chart, there's at least 418 of those units are specifically supportive housing units. So Jess was talking about this. What's the exit strategy from living in one of Hat's cabins? Supportive housing, permanent supportive housing where we can move people indoors, get support, get treatment, get to work with people like Bruce who can provide occupational therapy, nursing skills, addiction support, tenancy-related support, and people's lives transform. So the results are amazing and the costs are low in the grand scheme of things. So this chart, again, you can't read it, but it's just to show you that we do have a chart. And we did give this chart to Minister Calandra at the provincial level. He's the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. So he's seen this. The mayor gave it to him when he came for a tour of sites in July. So they know this information. They have the addresses in front of them. They have the details of how much each budget is. And on this little chart, we laid out which projects, who's going to live there. Is it women fleeing violence? Is it mental health support? We have it all written down. So they know what we can deliver. And then on the other side of that postcard, because that's like a little postcard, it says how much each of them, each level of government needs to put in there. On the capital side, from the province, it's only $77.5 million. Now, that's to build 418 supportive apartments, which means that the rents match people's ODSP. It means that they can live there as a stable tenant. It means that they can access all those health supports. And we don't have to leave people living in cabins. We don't have to leave people living in sheds or living in tarps or tents or on the sidewalk. So there is a way out of this, and our governments know it. We just need them to decide to spend the money that they actually already have. 77 million sounds like a lot. It's not that much in this province. We know that if you can find 250 million to get beer in the corner store faster, you might be able to find money to build housing, because that's also a stated priority. So the money is there and it aligns with their priorities, but maybe not their decision making just yet. I'll show one more slide of something else we can do, and then I'll summarize. You've probably heard about the big city mayors. This was on the news a couple weeks ago. They had a big conference in Ottawa called AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. They have this push to tell the province, you have to do something about homelessness. I think they said something like 240,000 people are homeless in Ontario right now. I think I heard it's 1,400 encampments across Ontario. So in one of the wealthiest provinces in the country, in one of the overall best off countries in the world, how are we living with hundreds of thousands of people in our parks, on the side of the road, in complete destitution? We don't need to. And so this campaign is called Solve the Crisis, that the big city mayors are saying, we're doing as much as we can locally, but we need you, dear province, to come to the table and to follow your constitutional responsibility. So the final slide that I have is, what can we do? And again, I know that you can't probably read that, but I can tell it to you. Philomena Tassi is the minister for Ancaster-Westdale. She's a wonderful person. She's a committed Christian. She has a high degree of personal conviction about these issues. She is part of government, and that's a complicated place. But she knows what to do. And in fact, it was her idea that brought Hamilton is Home together. She asked us in 2020, like literally weeks before the pandemic dawned on us, she said, what would it take to move the needle on homelessness and the affordable housing crisis in Hamilton? And we started blaming all kinds of stuff, and then we realized it was that we were not cooperating and we were not pulling in the same direction. So she actually got us going on thinking about how to change ourselves. Now let's come back to her with, Minister, we did the work ourselves. Now we need you to do the work. They have the money. They need to allocate it. It won't change any of our tax bills because they've already budgeted it. So that's the first thing we need to do. The second thing is, we need you to contact your MPP, Member of Provincial Parliament. I don't know, we've got 5 of them in Hamilton, so we probably all have one of them. Downtown, it's Sarah Jama, out in East Hamilton, it's Neil Lumsden. He's actually a cabinet minister, Minister of Sport. So again, sits around the cabinet table, can help his colleagues make decisions. But anyway, you can find your local MPP and send them a note saying, please support Hamilton is Home, and let's make this happen. The other person we can contact is Mayor Horvath. And not get mad at City Hall, but say, Mayor, you're on the right track. Call for solutions, make it happen, support what you know is possible, because she knows what we're offering is possible. I was at a meeting at City Hall last Friday with her, a number of other large developers in town, people concerned about the housing crisis who have the wherewithal and know-how to actually build housing. So she has the resources around her and the staff who are putting this report together. And then this is the final thing. That spirit of cooperation has pushed us to ask ourselves, what can we do? Jess and I are part of the Indwell community, Bruce as well. Michael, who's here, is part of the Flourish team that I lead. We know how to build housing. We know how to do all this work. But we sometimes don't want to get out of our comfort zone. And when it comes to encampments, that's true for Indwell. Indwell doesn't deal with people living in cabins and tents. We do the supportive housing. But if we've said to City Hall, look, if you'll back this exit strategy, because we would need something so that people don't get stuck living in a cabin or living in a sanctioned encampment. If you back the exit strategy, we're willing to lean into actually delivering the same support we do in permanent homes in these encampments. We're willing to actually form those kinds of teams, put 15 people working full-time in a sanctioned encampment, because the exit strategy is on the horizon. If you can see the future, I almost drowned one time. You know, I was up in Arrowhead Provincial Park, nice place. Have you ever been there? They've got those rocks you can jump off there. It's amazing. I thought I'll just swim across there. I'm not a great swimmer, but it was not that far. I got halfway across and panicked. I literally was going to drown. I knew it. My brother was there. He couldn't drag me all the way. My sister's on the far shore. She's a lifeguard. She jumps in the canoe and starts paddling. Emma jumps in the canoe and starts paddling. They were facing each other. That was kind of a problem. So one of them turned around, and then as soon as I knew that canoe was coming, I stopped panicking. And I was actually able to swim the whole way. So we don't necessarily need to rescue everybody, maybe is in the river, but if they know help is on the way, if folks are living in the Hats cabins and they can see the building where they're going to move and it's under construction, and every week they can watch the progress, you can bear with today sometimes, even though it's horrendous. We had this in Mississauga. One of our tenants moved in. He's like, I've been watching this building go up. I've been living in that park 2 blocks away, down by the lake, and I've watched this building go up. Was he the first tenant who moved in? He was one of the first tenants that moved into that building on Lakeshore Road because he could hold on while he watched his future. And the same thing can happen in Hamilton. We have 400 units of supportive housing that can start next week. We have 1,500 units of affordable housing that can start next week. We need the support from our decision makers to lead us. That's what they're called. They're called leaders. So we need them to do that. And we just want you to be hopeful that we can get out of this crisis together by cooperating. I'll stop there because I'm sure there might be other people who want to talk.
Don't sit down. Thank you so much, Graham. Thank you, Jess and Dan. And Dan, could you all please come back up here so that we can have questions from the floor? And before we do questions from the floor, although I hope you're thinking very clearly what you'd like to ask, because you're going to come up here and use this microphone, I'd like to ask the panelists if they could talk briefly with one another. Is there anything that you would like to address that someone else in this group has said? Here, Dan, have my other chair here. Anything that you would like to say to one another or ask one another that came up when you were listening to each other just now?
I'm not good with mics. Working with encampments, I was introduced to groups like the Hub, of course, working through Hats, but also the Cafe, and like I mentioned before, Healing Hearts. There are thousands of volunteers who are doing the hard work on the streets with no support. The amount of money in total, our cost going out into the encampment was $300. A lot of money was, a lot of the product was donated, and volunteers actually donated privately, quietly. And so it was no cost to Hats. But thousands of people are on the streets working together, and for me, that coordination will make a difference. That's I think Dan, or I forgot who used the term, like, what are we doing in the near time? Like, what are we doing right now? And there are thousands of volunteers, hundreds of groups that are doing the work. So the idea of coordination is so important, so I want to emphasize that.
Yeah, I just want to elaborate on that. Right now, HATS, our organization, is building a few of the 8x12 units in anticipation of getting a sanctioned piece of land. And so we're trying to get ready because the winter's upon us. From a project management perspective, the winter's upon us, so we're ready to commit to at least 50 units, and there's about 300 folks on the street as we speak today, if not more. We want to put a dent into it. The optimum size for a village for operations, when we did we took a look at best practices, is you don't want to go over about 50 units. Otherwise it gets out of hand. So that's what we're looking for, is to do multiple villages starting by the end of October, hopefully have a village established. Looking forward to the September 18th presentation by staff, and we are collaborating, as Graham has indicated, we are all collaborating with the city. We've had many disappointments, and I'm sure you know all about them. It's been in the newspapers, etc. But you got to bite your tongue, and you got to collaborate. You got to get this thing done. We're doing it. We're focused on our customer, the unhoused. That's who it's all about. So if we have to bite our tongue once in a while, so be it. We don't care.
I don't have very many questions for you because we've spent a lot of time together already. Yeah, we've been talking together with HATS for, I don't know, like, that's what I was just going to say, and I think one of the things that I appreciate is this listening posture, that we're able to learn together, and also HATS has been through a lot, and you keep going, and I think that's something that's really, really difficult. There's so many different things that are going on, and sometimes this seems unsolvable, but you're saying no, it's not, and moving forward. And so I think actually it's just appreciation.
Thank you very much. Who would like to come and ask our first question or make our first comment? Would you like to come on up so that you can use the mic, please? And if you know that you want to be the next one after, I think it's Stacy, please follow up after them so that you're ready to come next. So, okay. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Roseanne, and I'm a volunteer at Cathedral Cafe. So I see a lot of this every shift I go in. And I compliment everybody on the stage. You're doing great work. I have one question that I think could really help the problem, being the governments and making the funding available. And that is for somebody, because I know that I may have the best of intentions and you may have the best of intentions, but I never get around to it. I'd like somebody in one of your groups to put together an appropriate letter and to actually give us the addresses of all the MPs in Hamilton so we can pick out the one that's ours. We can download the letters from our computers and send them. I just think anything that can help that process would help all of us do something. That's it.
Thank you very
hand
much.
it to you right now.
Here am I, I'm an English teacher, and I was thinking exactly that when Graham was speaking. What exactly do you want me to say? So if you could tell us what exactly you want us to say, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
I do actually have one of those paper copies, so if you want to read all those fine print numbers, you can look at it here. I'll make some notes, because that's a very helpful suggestion. Thank you. We will set up a way that you can get on a mailing list or something like this so we can send it around. If you'd like to give us your email tonight, though, write it down in my book here with me, and we'll get that started.
Hi. So I'm the kind of person who just gives shit as opposed to sort of praising, so I'm just going to tell you that outright. I've been through a lot of these meetings, and I get really frustrated because I hear a lot of sort of bureaucrats talk in a position that privileges a certain kind of power. And listening to this conversation here, it's about how we can help And there's a sort of underlying assumption that no one in this room, for example, will need nioxalin. It's nioxalin training and they may not need it, or that nobody in this room necessarily has unstable housing. And there's assumption that we are not in need of supportive housing in this space, that we can, the talk of property taxes and not funding it. And I also am wondering why then, like, people who from Keep Six, or people from the Lived Experience Council at Good Shepherd, or residents of Indwell don't get invited into these rooms. Like, this is the third or fourth housing meeting I've been to where I've noticed very explicitly who has the power and who doesn't have the power. And often it's being served as opposed to a kind of liberation. And if we're in church, I need a lot more redistribution of resources and a lot more table throwing and a lot less of anything else. So, sorry, thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. It's really true. When we're having conversations, we're not talking about an other, we're actually talking about the real needs of people who are with us right here in our space. And you don't know who that is. And recognizing that we're not setting out to try to solve a problem for someone. We are looking to solve problems together. And when you identify that that's what's happening, and you start to realize, hey, where we're not actually representing. This doesn't actually represent who we're seeking to serve. Then we need to pause and say who's missing, and ensure that that those folks are included as well. So thanks for highlighting that, Stacy, and noted.
Thank you.
Somewhat related, one of the best practices we've noted and we're incorporating into our operations is to ensure the village members participate in the management of the village. It's somewhat related. I know it's after the fact, but I think that's an essential part, as well as establishing a coalition with the immediate neighborhood. So there's going to be contact with those individuals as well. But yes, they have to be participating first and foremost. Also, I think I mentioned, when we started down this path 3.5 years ago, we actually interviewed a few hundred individuals to help shape the solution set to make sure that we're doing what is right for them. They are the customer, the client, and we got to stay focused on that. But your point's well taken. For forums like this, yes, we have to be welcoming and have them participate, absolutely. And so we need to change that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm going to add on to your the last question, because I think it's really important. Right now there's sessions going around the city of Hamilton looking for input on housing. It's posted, I believe, on the city website, and there's a lot of stuff going on at Hamilton Library. So it's an opportunity for everybody to get out. 2, kudos to HATS, because we had an evaluator come and interview people at Cathedral Cafe last year. And these are the people that are living on the streets, that are living in the tents. Tell us what you want. What can we do? And I believe you inputted that into your plans. So I just wanted to add that little bit. So, like, I really, really agree. It's important to get the input from people that need it. So my name is Carrie Lubrick, and I go to Christ Church Cathedral here in Hamilton, involved in Cathedral Cafe, previous city employee. So 33 years. And I think, first of all, I want to say kudos to St. John's for putting this on. And walking up, yes. And I want to say, what an amazing feeling walking in here and seeing everybody come with their trays of food. Is that not community or what? Like, I thought that was amazing to eat together and now plan together. So that was lovely. I thought it was lovely. And I think it comes to a lot of comments that was said, especially you, Jess. It's really important about attitudes and how we approach people, looking people in the eye. Because right now there is so much fear and hatred, and some of it comes from what you said, deserving and undeserving. And there's still that attitude out there, and I can't stand it. So, like Roseanne said, let's get on it. There's enough people here to make a difference. I'm an advocate in many different ways. And one of the things I advocate for is a basic income. Because one of the big things that is missing right now is livable incomes. So we've talked about people on ODSP. I guess this is Graham. How much is your rent a month at Indwell right now? It's over 700, right?
560 would be the basic.
Okay. ODSP shelter. Now you look at Ontario Works. So if you're on Ontario Works, it's $733 a month. That's it. So you have to look at incomes that are low level, but I'm an advocate for a basic income. And when I write to my MPs, MPPs, and even talk to councillors or candidates in elections, it's amazing how many say, nobody's ever brought this to our attention before. But, you know, I think, my goodness, it's all of us that make a difference. It's how you interact. So make a commitment. The Big Mayor's survey is easy. Click, click, and it's done. It gets out there. We've advertised it within our church, but it's an easy one. But I agree with Roseanne. Yes, we need a letter to help us, just the key points, because even I'm trying to keep up to write down what should I put in my letter. You have the answer. Do I say, just call Graham and he knows? I want to sound reasonable, but that would be helpful to us. And yeah, that's my last point, but I say thank you. It's about collaboration, and Hamilton can make a difference. So thank you all for the work you've done. It's amazing.
So I would just like to pick up on the point where we all want to go home and write a letter. I have written letters in the past, and I've been told that those form letters, if they all come in with the same wording and the same kind of structure, that they don't pay very much attention to them. It just seems like it's a campaign. So I really applaud the idea of having the letter, the points, but if everybody could make it so that it's personal to them, and that this is not just a form letter that people are signing mindlessly and sending it out, I think it'll have more power.
Thank you, Barbara.
Hi, I'm Cindy, one of the people rescued up here in the water. I understand what Stacy was saying. Stacy, I just want to step up and support what you were saying. I tried to get my son to come. My son is 39 years old. He's a recovering opioid addict. He has severe social anxiety. So although I think this would have been so valuable for him to hear and to contribute, he just wasn't up to that. And, you know, that might be for many people, but if we could find a way to involve people and encourage them to come and make it feel safe, that would probably be helpful.
Thank you very much, Cindy.
Thank you for that. And I do want to acknowledge, I mean, obviously I have a massive ton of privilege, so many privileges I won't even start talking about them, but we do work really hard to connect to people who actually are destitute and on the side of the road. 2 weeks ago I was at Bayfront Park going around talking to folks in tents who are living there extremely exposed to the elements, violence, predation, harassment, all of these things. And one guy lost both of his legs from being homeless. He said, I've had 23 wheelchairs stolen because, you know, he's completely powerless. People can just knock him over, steal his chair, leave him on the side of the road. So we have to make sure that these sanctioned encampments, these bridge options, as we'd rather call them, are actually tailored to real people's needs, the real people who are going to make them home temporarily, that there isn't one big encampment with 400 cabins, you know, to Dan's point. Size matters, scale matters. Maybe we actually have different demographics for different locations. Because people who are living rough right now are people. They're our neighbors. A week and a half ago, you know, in that heat wave we had, a couple weeks ago back now, I guess, but somebody was showering in our driveway because they were using our garden hose while we were away. You know, so it's not like this is something that's far away from any of us. These are our neighbors. These are people in our community who we know, often by name, and who we know are destitute, but none of us feels the power individually to change this situation, but collectively we can.
So my question concerns smaller housing providers, people like Artaban Place, which is right next door. And I'm wondering if you see a role for us in solving this crisis.
I mean, absolutely, because there's not one solution. When we're looking at a complex set of crises, right? Like there's multiple things co-occurring. So we need supported affordable housing. We need small providers. There's not, you know, not every solution works for every person. And so that's where there are, there's also rent supplement programs you've heard of. We also know of IMBY, right? There's a lot of really excellent other ways that people can have places to live. The thing about it is that these are permanent options where someone's not going to have to move. So Artaban, actually, I was going to include Artaban in my talk because in the earliest days, our Indwell offices were just down the road, and we actually met together with Artaban. Those were great days. But there's a place for multiple different ways of approaching this.
Sharon, that's a very good point as well, because we have a lot of social housing providers, affordable housing providers in Hamilton. One of the challenges with acute homelessness and you know, people who are encamped is lives fall apart, skills get lost, people become very destitute, and simply moving into an apartment might not be actually what's needed. Maybe that opioid addiction that you have and you're struggling with is overwhelming. Maybe, you know, alcoholism, diabetes is wildly out of control. Many people who are living rough actually need health care and need that integrated with their daily life. Where do people move out of supportive housing? That's actually one of the big questions. And moving into a social housing apartment, moving into an affordable apartment is one of the key answers. So making sure that your apartments are available to the city, to the waiting lists for people to move out of these options is really key. City housing, you know, we can point at them and say, hey, you do lots of things wrong. One of the things they're doing right now is fixing up all those empty units that they had. And I think they had 400 and something units. They're almost done repairing them all and getting them back on stream. That's huge. They need to be encouraged for that.
I was wondering if the Indwell people could talk more about family units and just, is that something you currently offer, and is it an area that will continue to grow in the future?
Short answer, yes. Longer answer is we hope to get a lot more. In many of the legacy buildings, I mean the buildings that were built years ago that Indwell purchased, there's a good portion of those units that are 2 bedrooms. So Emma and I lived for 4 years down the street at Caroline in Charlton. That building has about a third of the units are 2 bedrooms. So, and because families need supportive housing often as well. We actually have 23 family units that are ready to build on East Avenue. We have a building permit ready to pick up. We just are missing $3.5 million from the province. So literally we're sitting on a building permit ready to go. And that would be families who could move out of emergency shelter. We have 56 families who are in emergency shelter or hotel right now. So instead of putting the money into supportive housing, we're putting it into the hands of hotel operators to keep people stable indoors but still in crisis. It just gets me so worked up, but hopefully we can get that changed this fall and get under construction so 23 families can move out of emergency shelter.
I'm trying to figure out how this can be a... Sorry, did you want to have a secondary question?
Who do I email about the $3.5 million?
I mean, you can email the mayor. she actually brought Minister Calandra from the province to that site. You could email Minister Calandra and say, look, you were there in July. You saw it. It's called Acorn Flats. Just email him and say, you've been there, you know the building permit's ready to go. $3.5 million gets 23 families out of shelter. That'd be great. Acorn Flats.
Think baby oak tree.
I was talking with Catherine Kalinowski from Good Shepherd, and was trying to do some brainstorming with her about what churches could be doing as well. And she said that, I think both Graham, I think all of you mentioned at some point that like once, say, Good Shepherd gets somebody into a long-term stable housing situation, a lot of those folks, if they're not surrounded by community and by people who are going to be there for them, if they're not there for them, then often the housing falls apart for them. And so wanting to encourage us all to think about how can we be community for people that have then, I think all along the way, right? But how do we be best community? And I love hearing about folks going into encampments and supporting people by bringing meals and things like that, and looking people in the eye and remembering their name to the next time. But then at each stage along that bridge, and to the end of the bridge as well, right? How can we as churches really be looking around at our neighborhood and who the people are that are living in whatever situation they are, and be community for them. I'm not sure if you have if any of you have something that you can say about like how churches, just in that community kind of way, can be reaching into each different space.
I think there's a pub down the street, and we can go and let's go chat. I think this is one of the things that is really at my core, because there's, and this actually gets a little bit at what Stacey was talking about. There's charity doing for someone, right? Helping someone out of the stream. But where we really want to be is this space of equality, of shared unity, of recognizing ourselves in one another, actually seeing Jesus in each person, and so getting to this space where our churches are actually fully welcoming communities for everyone, and that there are places of leadership and places of power, and we actually talk about it as asset-based community development if you want to kind of dry it out a little bit. But it's recognizing that each person actually has something to offer and something to bring, and finding opportunities for that to happen, and having our churches actually oriented not just caring for people, but caring with our community. And that, I think, is the space that we want to get to. But it begins with actually connecting, seeing people, looking them in the eye, getting to know their names, but then starting to actually build a relationship and coming to know one another more closely. That, I think, that's actually the thing that helps people stay housed. It's probably the most powerful thing that can help when we're in a system that is broken. I think of, right, for myself, there was a time when, through the disruption in my family, I did not have a place to live. I found myself homeless. But homeless for me looked very, very different than it did for a tenant who moved into our buildings. She's the same age that I am. She lives in one of our Indwell buildings. For me, it meant that my friend's family took me in, and I lived with them for 2 months after my family home was no longer available to me, while I waited for another place to live, because the community met me and caught me and saved me from what happened to the individual who moved into the Indwell buildings, because the disruption in their family meant that they did not have an option, and their parent dropped them off at the YWCA, and they began a journey that led to a few comorbidities and difficulties. And the system couldn't do what the community can do. And this is what we can do as a community. We can meet people, we can catch one another, because we also have been caught. You've been caught, right? There are things that have helped you be well, things that have helped you stay healthy, stay housed. We want those things to exist for everyone. Of course.
On a very practical, how many of you volunteer at the Cathedral Cafe? Because I think I heard 2 or 3 of you mention that. Well, gosh, okay. More than 2 or 3. How many of you are tired? Okay, well, that's good. Not many of you. That's fantastic. One of you are. You read about this compassion fatigue. You read about sort of like people are at wit's end. They're tired of being kind. You know, that's a really harsh point to get to. I think one of the key things why we need to get out of the immediate crisis of people destitute on the side of the road and in parks, and we need to move into a stabilized environment that actually has an exit strategy, because it's not really easy for us as individuals or caring people to go and come alongside people on the side of the road. It's extremely perilous for lots of reasons. But if we have these sanctioned encampments or HATS communities or some other options, part of those is physical structures, some general guidelines, rules, an environment where you can come together around food, where you can come together around other things, to volunteer, to be a neighbor, to do those kinds of things, in an environment that actually meets people at a level of equality or parity, rather than the extreme power and safety imbalance that represented on the street. We have to become neighbors, not just adversaries. And we see that possible. We see that possibility. And I think this is why for Indwell and I'll give credit to Jess and to Jeff Nevin, the CEO at Indwell, for stepping away from what we do today every day and what might we do in the interim while we get to the supportive housing. The idea of actually having a support team that we're familiar with running, 15 staff who know how to deliver a range of supports, coming to, working in, being embedded in a HATS community is a new thing for Indwell. It's a new thing for HATS. It's one of the things they don't have in most other places that try these cabin things. It's a different way of being community and actually bringing people back into community. And so those become the environments where volunteers, where churches, where we as individual neighbors can come alongside those who are still encamped, even if it's in a cabin.
I just want to elaborate on that. We're all learning as time goes by. We're all learning and looking for, again, what is the best thing to do for our clients. And one area we have evolved to is we're looking at establishing a continuum for the individual. Because what happens now is an individual will go and get a service, but nobody's checking on them to say, how can I help you further in this area or this area? Whereas our collaboration with Indwell and others of late has really revealed that we can follow an individual now from when they're unhoused all the way through to the optimum situation where they're into housing. We haven't had that before. Our fabric is so broken. Our social fabric is so broken. You know, you yourselves go to see a doctor and all of a sudden there's a handoff. And what happens with you? Like, who follows your course? Not many. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow an individual's track through that transformation. And I think that's very, very different from what we have as far as the solution set now. So we're very optimistic. I think political will was not there around the horseshoe, and I think it's come about now. I know I am very optimistic that we've turned the corner, finally. But it's folks like yourselves talking to your counselor, talking to the mayor, communicating with them that has helped turn that. Because I've been in front of council over 9 times, and it's very frustrating. You go back and you say some of the same things, or you add aspects and you get cross-examined. How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? But I think our strategy has worked whereby, you know what, pull back. Others have to make it happen. And congratulations to anyone and everyone that has really voiced their opinion to council and the mayor, because it's working. I can see we've turned the corner, as I say, but our solution has evolved, and that's what's important, working with Indwell and Flourish and Hamilton as home. That whole coalition has become very effective, and we're very optimistic that you're going to hear some good news, hopefully on the 18th.
This is an announcement for everyone here who feels moved to go home and write those letters and emails tonight. One of our neighbors came prepared, so catch me on your way out. I have addresses for the federal and provincial ministers for housing and for the mayor's office, postal addresses, email addresses, phone numbers. I'll be by the west door. Come take a photo or take a note, and you can go home and do that right away.
Following up, I assume that the messaging will be different before September 18th and after. I mean, it will be clear that we can be more focused on, what we need, the message needs to be. As a regional archdeacon for the Anglican parishes in this area, I'm quite happy to pass on to all the clergy in our region an updated resource for skeletal messaging, and as well as the list that Andrew just provided. I also know that Alice may have access to the faith leaders network, so that we are not simply within the Anglican ghetto, and so perhaps we can get better at the distribution of our resources for advocacy. Thank you.
So can I just ask one question? Somebody told me this, and I passed it on tonight as if it was fact, but I probably should actually check it. Somebody told me that if you have 1,500 signatures on a request and you send that to your MP, they have to read it in Parliament. And I think there's this magic number of 1,500. Does anybody know anything about this? Okay, so I might have just told her that, and then she passed it. So I'm realizing occasionally, very occasionally, never, not regularly do I do that, but I'm pretty sure there's this rule that if we have 1,500 signatures on a singular petition, not that email thing like somebody said, but on a petition, that they actually have to read it and consider it in Parliament. So maybe we just need to do that. Because, honestly, this money is budgeted and it goes back into Treasury and disappears. I'd rather have all of this investment in Hamilton, and if we need to do 1,500 signatures to get it formally discussed in Parliament, maybe we do that. And, I'll commit to finding the research. According to Google, so slightly more reliable than me. Okay, 100,000. Why did somebody tell me 1,500? Dang. Okay. Okay, so now we have some homework to figure out what can we achieve. 10,000, they have to respond. 100,000, they might actually have to consider it. So I'll take that back for consideration. We got to figure out what to do. 100,000's a lot, but we got more than that in Hamilton, so let's figure that out.
Don't you think it's great when you come to a meeting where you know it's going to say, what can we do, that the meeting doesn't really exactly end. It kind of goes home with you. And what you can do is the end of the meeting. That is, you write something when you get home. You don't stop now. But we are going to stop now because we're already slightly over time, and we do try very hard in these meetings not to run over time. It was difficult, though, because it was also interesting and hopeful. I don't know about you, but I feel I'm going to go home feeling hopeful, which is a quality that's hard to come by these days when you look at our public situation. So we are very, very thankful to these guys for all that they are doing in this world, as well as what they have given to us tonight. And let's tell them so with some applause.
Thanks to Deborah for organizing, and thanks to all of you for coming. Thanks for not giving up hope and for contacting the mayor, at least, and your MP Tassi. And Minister Calandra is the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing in Ontario, and he has the money. So anyway, thanks for that. And Andrew's got the list of all those addresses at the back. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.